Hey everyone, and welcome back to MMA Alerts. Let's begin today with Paddy Pimblett getting a warning for the fight with Bobby Green. Going back into the cage this summer, Paddy Pimblett will fight Bobby Green at UFC 304 in Manchester, England. It will be a very exciting light heavyweight fight. On fight night, the bad guy will be the crowd favorite, but Leon Edwards thinks Bobby Green will win. A few weeks ago, Edwards broke down the fight in a chat with co-headliner for UFC 304, Tom Aspinall. Before the fight, Green is a small favorite at most of the major sports books. This means that the MMA community seems to agree with Edwards about how things might go. Pimblett wants to win his 6th straight fight and move into the top 15, and Green wants to make it 2 in a row after beating Jim Miller at UFC 300. The stakes couldn't be higher for either fighter going into UFC 304. Next, let's look at what Sean O'Malley says will happen between Leon Edwards and Islam Makhachev. For a long time now, Islam Makhachev has had his goals set on moving up in weight to become a champion. The move might not happen in this fight, but Makhachev seems to be moving up faster than not. The question is when he will do it. Sean O'Malley and his coach, Tim Welsh, talked about the idea of a fight between Makhachev and Leon Edwards on a recent episode of the Timbo Sugar Show. Armin Sarukian sounds like the next person Islam Makhachev will need to beat. If he wins the fight and Leon Edwards protects his title against Bilal Muhammad in Manchester, the two could end up fighting in 2025. Next, let's look at Dustin Poirier finally talks about his plans to quit. Dustin Poirier made it clear to fans after his loss to Islam Makhachev at UFC 302 that they had probably seen him fight for the last time. On this week's episode of the MMA Hour, Poirier answered the question that has been going around the MMA community: how is his business going? Taking some hits over the years. Something has to be the reason for it, and maybe I'll understand that in the next few weeks. I'm just taking each day as it comes. In fact, I think I'm almost done, even more than before. Yes, for sure. So much so that you wonder, how many more fights do I have to do to get back in the running to fight for the world title? I'm not sure. I already said I wouldn't do it again. There's no way I'm going to fight 5 more times to get another title shot. The Diamond said that he isn't ruling out a return for sure, but he also said that he wouldn't be calling Hunter Campbell to set up a fight. I'm not calling. Not at all. Okay, that's fine. You'll never find out. Not at all. Okay, Poirier wasn't interested when Helwani brought up the idea of a possible repeat with Conor McGregor or a long-awaited fight with Nate Diaz. I wanted the belt, but I need to think about what I want to say next. I don't find it interesting. My phone would ring right now and it would be Hunter. He would say, hey, this fight, maybe I got to see how I feel when it's offered to me that tells me what choice to make. That's right. When I think about it, nothing sounds appealing to me. We'll have to wait and see if the Diamond changes his mind before we know it. Look, let's now look at George St. Pierre says that the best UFC fighter is Islam Makhachev. A lot of people have different opinions about the pound-for-pound rankings since Islam Makhachev won at UFC 302. Some people in the MMA community think that Islam Makhachev should be called the pound-for-pound king because of all the work he does. Dana White and many other MMA fans put John Jones at the top of their pound-for-pound list. George St. Pierre thinks that Makhachev is the best boxer in the world in terms of pound-for-pound. He talked about what was going on in the most current video with Raz Zahabi. A few years ago, Dustin Poirier fought another pound-for-pound king named Khabib Nurmagomedov. On the MMA Hour, he talked about what he thought was different between Nurmagomedov and Makhachev. Takedowns are not the same. Pressure is about the same. It's a little different with takedowns. He works out his upper body a lot. He kept trying to get close to me so that he could shoot lower. I believe Khabib was physically stronger. Islam put a huge strain on people. He felt great during the whole fight, which I've never seen him before. These guys are all strong, but it wasn't too much. But that squeeze, that twist, and that darts were like a vice, They were like a vice group. The MMA community is still not sure who should be called the pound-for-pound king, but according to UFC.com, Makhachev is currently in first place. Now let's look at what's new with UFC. After last weekend's UFC Fight Night Louisville show, Let's look at today's UFC fight news. The main event will be a welterweight fight on September 7th between Gilbert Burns and Sean Brady. The fight has been scheduled for 5 rounds. Burns will try to end a 2-fight losing streak. His most recent loss was to Jack de la Madonna in March after a long break after his loss to Bilal Muhammad at UFC 288, where he won his first fight. On the other hand, Brady will be looking to build on his win over Kelvin Gastelum in December. That win got him back to winning ways after his first loss in professional wrestling at UFC 280 a year ago. This past weekend, Kaya Sakura, the rising bantamweight champion, shocked everyone by saying that he had given up his title and signed with the UFC. Sakura talked about what was going on while addressing the crowd at Ryzen 47. I'm leaving my belt behind and joining the UFC. I think the UFC will make a statement soon, but I'm definitely going. The news should be exciting, but I'm feeling very alone right now. I think Ryzen made me known as a fighter, a martial artist, and a man when I wasn't known as any of those things before. On the last night of the year, on New Year's Eve, Mr. Sakakibara agreed to let me go to the UFC without a single defense. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Mr. Sakakibara for his help. Thanks a lot. MMA Mania's Alex Bahunin said that the UFC wants Asakura to make his official UFC debut against one of the top 5 fighters in the world. There hasn't been any news about who he'll fight yet, but it only seems like a matter of time before a fight is set in stone. Next, let's look at Jared Cannonier, who is mad at the UFC judge. Judge Jason Herzog didn't like that Jared Cannonier and Nasruddin Imavov got into a fight at UFC Night Louisville last weekend, but he stopped it in the 4th round. Imavov was landing a lot of strikes, which changed the momentum in his favor. However, Cannonier was still protecting himself, which made the stoppage a very controversial one. On Monday's episode of the MMA Hour, he went after Herzog to stop the fight. Cannonier also said that he wasn't actively trying to get away when the fight was stopped, which is what some people in the MMA community have said. Because the fight was stopped, Cannonier wants to fight Imavov again at UFC Fight Night Paris in September. Cannonier says Mick Maynard might even want to set up a second fight. In the meantime, Jason Herzog wrote about the situation on social media, thinking about why he chose to fight in writing. I get it. I know what I saw at the time, but enough people have told me I need to think about it again. I will do that. Let's change gears and look at Chito Vera says that Henry Cejudo asked him to fight. While Marlon Chito Vera is getting ready for his fight with Davidson Figueiredo, he almost got booked to meet Henry Cejudo again. Originally, the fight was set to happen at UFC 292, but Cejudo pulled out of the fight because he was hurt at the time. On the most recent episode of the MMA Hour, Vera talked about how she almost had to reschedule. First, they gave me Cejudo. They asked, do you want to fight Henry? I said, yeah, I fight sometimes. I called Perillo and told him, hey, coach, they have this. What do you think? He told us to do it. Or you're at the gym. It looks good on you. You seem hungry and in the present. Let's do it. They called me back and told me that they had other plans for him. I'm not sure what it is. They asked, what about Figueiredo? Yes, I said. Vera is getting ready for a tough fight because Figueiredo was a champion in the past. All of these fights are just as important to me as the title fight and the ones before it. I'm going to break in and tell that jerk that we're now on time. Let me go to the basement and pull all the monsters out if I have to. Or we'll bring them. Some people have asked if he's had enough time to rest, but he miraculously left Miami after his UFC 299 loss to Sean O'Malley without any major injuries, even though he was hit 230 significant strikes to 89 during the 5-round fight. Hunter gave me a call and asked, how are you? I told them I was fine. He asked, are you hurt? I said, no way. I mean, I got hurt in the fight, but nothing was broken. There was no harm. There was no damage. Thank you very much. I'm fine now. That's all they do. Along with Figueiredo, he wants to get into the title picture in the stacked 135-pound division. It will be interesting to see how things go in August. MMA fans make fun of Aljamain Sterling for the video he made in reaction to the UFC documentary that showed Hunter Campbell trying to get Aljo to agree to fight Sean O'Malley. This is Aljamain Sterling's answer. We've all seen the video going around on social media and the internet. It shows an exchange between Hunter, my boss, and me. I wasn't really looking forward to seeing that clip again because it made me feel all those feelings all over again. It made me a little angry because of how everything went down at that time. Because if you look at the events that led up to my fight, I had a really hard training camp to make that weight cut, and it was a hard fight that went 5 rounds. Then they don't normally make fights the night of the fight, but for some reason my fight was made that night. You're right, it wasn't easy to just say, hey, I'm a badass, I'll turn around and fight. I also know the story about how I can't get out of my own way and don't help myself when I use social media and other things. I told him that night that I didn't understand what he was saying. Right now, I don't want to fight. That's all I had to say. I need to get better and see how my body does. I felt those feelings all over again when I watched that clip. I could picture myself in that room thinking, yeah, you're telling me, no, I can sit this one out. You also say that you won't fight for almost a year if you don't. Also, that's not cool. You're almost making me tie my hands behind my back. But I went down the road because my teammates and managers were pushing me to. I thought, hey, I'll take a chance. I am going to throw a die. And everyone is telling Aljo, look at what the MMA community said about him. It's not required for fighters to accept a fight deal. It's also true that the UFC doesn't have to give you another fight for 6 months after you say no to one. I wish more of your fans knew that things aren't so black and white. LOL, you were so lame, and the UFC wanted someone not so lame to be the champ. At this point, this guy should just shut up. I'm actually from Long Island, so I tend to favor all those guys a lot, but it's so hard to cheer for this guy. If OO has a broken rib, I don't see how he could be behind in time. It's what my boss and my friends want me to do. What do you want to talk about, man? Don't act like the victim. Right on. He's an adult now. He needs to stand up for himself. This video shows exactly what Dana said. LOL, that guy smells bad. Who is the bigger whiner, Strickland or Aljo? It's crazy how much these two guys are whining. Aljo by a long shot. It's almost there. Strickland really has beef. He beat DDP, but he didn't get to fight him again. Funny thing is, Aljo could have just said, no, he won. This nonsense is not what I want to hear. Since Ariel tweeted about UFC 303, the fight between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler is once again in danger, he wrote, at this point last week, all the stress about the UFC 303 main event seemed to start to fade. By Wednesday, no more hints were being sent out about possible candidates. Everything looked like it would work again. After the week was over, Chandler told the Pivot that everything was fine, and on Saturday, the UFC promoted on ABC's Fight Night. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for latest fight updates.